back to Queer Gravel. Today I want to share with you about a bike that has completely changed my life, the Momentum PakYak E+. Now before we go any farther, this bike was given to me by Giant as part of my ambassador contract with them, but they are not paying me to say anything about this or to make this video. My contract has nothing to do with my YouTube channel. All opinions are my own, and this is not a sponsored video. The PakYak E+ is an e-cargo bike from Momentum, which is Giant's lifestyle brand. I got the bike in late March, and so I've had several months to play with it and kind of get a handle on it and see what it's capable of. And while I had really high hopes for an e-cargo bike and what it could do for my life, I have to say I am definitely not disappointed. In this video, I want to show off the bike, its kind of standard features, what I've upgraded and the changes I've made to it, and show off a little bit of what it can do. So let's dive into the bike. The PakYak is powered by Giant's Sync Drive Pro motor system. This Pro motor boasts 80 Newton meters of torque and up to 360% pedal assist. Now this bike doesn't have a throttle, which for some folks looking for an e-cargo bike, that might be a downside, but to tell the truth, I haven't missed it. I could see why you might want one, but this motor has enough torque that I've never had any trouble getting it off the line, even when the bike was really, really loaded down. I really like the way that this motor does pedal assist. This really feels very natural and really smooth, and if it weren't for the little bit of sound that the motor makes, you probably wouldn't even notice that it was assisting you until you tried to pedal without it. The motor has 5 different assist levels, with the lowest level being Eco, and then it goes up to Tour, Active, Sport, and Power modes, and also has kind of a smart assist mode, which is the first mode that it's in when you turn the bike on, which essentially adjusts the level of assistance depending on certain factors like the incline, your cadence, how much power you're putting into it. The bike comes stock with a 500 watt-hour battery, which they say gives you about 80-ish miles in eco mode. I also bought the secondary battery. It's a second 500 watt-hour battery, which supposedly increases the range to up to 160 miles in eco mode, which, if that's true, that's pretty awesome. It's important to note though that with any e-bike or any e-cargo bike, the actual range that you get out of the battery is extremely dependent on the terrain that you're riding, the weight of the rider, as well as whatever you've put on the bike. If you're shopping for an e-cargo bike, make sure that you kind of take all of those numbers with a grain of salt. It's not likely that you will get all of those numbers, so just be prepared for that. As far as some of the features that come stock with the bike, it comes with really sturdy front and rear racks. It has integrated lighting, and of course it comes with a dropper post. Now, if you're into the mountain biking scene, you might be thinking, why does a cargo bike need a dropper post? But the reality is, when you're carrying a heavy load, being able to keep the bike between your legs and put your feet flat on the ground means that you have a lot more control over the load and over the bike when you're starting and stopping in city traffic. So having a dropper post is super, super handy. It is a Giant's proprietary dropper post that also has a little bit of suspension in it. So you have some air-tuned suspension, about 40 mil of suspension on it, so it does help to smooth out the ride, which is super handy. I really love the front and rear racks that the PakYak comes with, especially the front rack. One of the things that I love most about this rack, aside from the fact that it's massive and has a huge weight capacity at close to 40 pounds just in the front rack, it's actually mounted to the head tube of the bike. So it's mounted to the frame instead of to the fork, which means as you're riding and you're turning and steering, the load that you have stays in alignment with the bike instead of flopping around with the handlebars. This means that even when it's really loaded down, it's very stable and easy to maneuver the bike, and I've really, really been impressed with how well it handles even with a heavy load on the front. Now, having integrated lights on an e-bike is kind of a no-brainer. I will say the stock rear light on the PakYak leaves a lot to be desired. It's not particularly bright. It doesn't have a flashing function. That's actually one of the first upgrades that I made to the bike. Garmin sent over one of their eVaria taillight radar systems. Now, if you've been watching this channel for very long, you know that I love the Varia taillight radar system that Garmin makes, and they just released one that actually wires directly into your e-bike, so you don't have to worry about charging it. It powers right off the e-bike battery, and it's a game changer. Swapping out these lights was such a great move. This light is so much brighter. It has a blinking function. When the radar senses something coming up behind you, it changes the pattern to increase visibility, and the radar shows up directly on my Garmin watch, so I don't have to worry about running a head unit or anything like that in order to see what's coming up behind me. And this light really does add a ton of peace of mind. So if you have an e-bike or you're looking for an e-bike, I highly recommend checking out the Evaria. Again, not sponsored, but I love this light. It's very easy to install, and it works flawlessly. If you're finding this video helpful, be sure to click that like button and don't forget to subscribe so that you know when more awesome bike-related videos are coming out. Now, the PakYak ships pretty bare bones, but Momentum makes a ton of really great accessories for it. A few of the things that I picked up and that I actually paid for with my own money were the passenger seat and footrests, as well as the rear rack panniers and that spare battery that I mentioned. Now, the PakYak boasts a pretty hefty 360-pound weight limit, but if I'm being honest, I've already pushed that considerably and have had zero issues. Of course, try that at your own risk, but that higher weight limit means that you can in fact put a passenger on the back, and to do that and to make it really comfortable, Momentum has made a padded seat for the rear rack and some footrests. My youngest loves riding on the PakYak, and I will take her to school on it often. She really enjoys it, and she was so excited when the bike came in that we actually did several trips without the footrests and without the seat pad, and just bungee corded a pillow to the back rack. And while she still had a blast, she was very excited when the seat pad actually came in, because it is actually remarkably comfortable, and those footrests make it really easy to rest your feet. And the bonus of the footrests is that they are super sturdy and offer other mounting points if you're carrying strange shaped things. Each one of those has a weight limit of about 50 pounds. Now, if I'm honest, I'm always a little bit wary of the soft goods that are made by big bike brands that tend to try to do a little bit of everything. I prefer to focus on brands that focus on one thing and do it really, really well. That being said, I really like the rear rack panniers that Momentum has made for the PakYak. They're very versatile. They can be folded up when not in use to keep them kind of low profile, but they expand and open in such a way that you can carry lots of interesting shaped things, including longer pieces of like wood or piping or things like that. I've used them several times to carry grocery bags, and I can fit 2 full grocery bags in each pannier, so that's 4 total just with the bags on the sides without adding any other cargo capacity to the PakYak, which is awesome. And so far, the bags have held up really well to rain, mud, different riding conditions, and I've had zero issues with them. I feel like they're gonna last a really long time. Granted, this is still only a few months in, and I'll give you an update as I've ridden it even more, but with only these few months in and over 1,500 miles on the bike, these things are looking great. So now we're gonna move on to more of the custom upgrades that I've put into the PakYak. I mentioned the taillight. That was something that I added personally. The next thing that kind of runs along those lines is I swapped out the standard stem for the Redshift Shock Stop Pro stem, which is an awesome suspension stem. It really kind of smooths out a lot of the harsher bumps and whatnot when riding on different kinds of pavement. The wheels on the PakYak are not set up tubeless, and so you have to run slightly higher pressures with tubed tires. And I noticed that being used to gravel and running really squishy tires, these more firm tires kind of harshed the ride a little bit, and this suspension stem really takes the buzz out of potholes and things like that that would really kind of jar me otherwise. My goal for this bike has really been functionality and comfort, and this stem really does add a lot of comfort. I will say I've run this stem on gravel bikes before, and I've always loved it. The one thing I will say with this kind of bike, because you're in such an upright position, you need to set the elastomers for a lower weight in order to get more of that squish going. So I think I set it for maybe 50 pounds lighter than I set it for my gravel bike. Once I did that, it felt amazing. Now, adding to the comfort piece, as well as the functionality piece, I added Tannis armor inserts into the tires. I got my first flat maybe 4 or 5 weeks into having the bike, and let me tell you, dealing with a bike this size with a flat tire is a real pain. The bike is big, it doesn't fit in vehicles very easily, it's hard to take the rear wheel off. It was such a pain in the neck that I decided I didn't want to deal with that ever again if I could avoid it. And so I put Tannis armor inserts into the tires, which one, protects the tube from any debris that may show up on the streets when I'm riding. These tire inserts add 15 millimeters of protection along the center point of the tire and something between 5 and 7 millimeters on the sidewalls. While I really like the Momentum panniers for the rear rack, I opted for this Dark Realm basket bag for the front rack because honestly, it's beautiful. Look at it. It's awesome. And it's super functional. It opens up really wide and you can pack things really tall if necessary. I like having a bag on the front because it's a little bit easier to get in and out of than the rear panniers. And it's nice to have a place where I can just kind of stuff and store things quickly without having to think too much about it. Attached to the front rack, I also have 2 Looney Bin bottle cages, which is what I use for the bottle cages on this bike. You'll notice that the shape of the frame doesn't allow for any bottle cage bosses really anywhere in the frame. So Momentum has thought of that and put the bottle cage bosses on the front rack. This actually makes for really easy and convenient access to whatever it is you're trying to drink. And these cages adjust to keep whatever size thing you're using secure. Another upgrade that I added that I absolutely love that helps with safety on a lot of different levels are these Redshift ArcLight pedals. Now these are the ArcLight Pros, so they have the metal platform and the pins which allow for really great grip while you're riding. But the thing that really sets these pedals apart are these smart lights that are integrated into them. Turn them on and regardless of which way the pedals spin, the light in front is always white and the light in back is always red. It adds a lot of side visibility, which if you're a cyclist who does a lot of commuting, you know that that is one, a place where it's really difficult to add light and visibility, and 2, a place that's maybe most important because if you're going to be hit, often things happen from the side when you're in the city. So having these pedals, and you can see this clip, you can see how illuminated the bike is from the side. It increases visibility so much, and I just have to say, they're super cool. So let's move on to the carrying capacity of the bike. Now, when I first got it, I started experimenting with different ways to carry bigger and heavier and more awkwardly shaped loads. And one of the first things that I did was just attach a large storage bin onto the rear rack. And that actually worked super well for quite a while, but then I realized that the material of the container had a lot of flex to it and made whatever I loaded into it feel fairly unstable. So I decided to build a small cargo platform just out of a plank of wood. I drilled some holes and put the right size screws in there so it attaches and detaches just as quickly and easily as the seat pad that would go there on the rear rack. I can take that seat pad off and place this cargo platform on instead. It gives me a lot of great mounting options for tying down bungee cords and the like, and because it's so much wider than the top of the rack, if I put a larger bin on the back, it remains a lot more stable, making it a lot easier to carry bigger and heavier things. I can fill that bin up with lots of stuff and still feel very confident in the bike's handling. Now you'll see I also have a bin that's very easy to take on and off just with bungee cords. Just with those bungees, it stays very stable and secure. And I've had this thing filled up with groceries and I've had no issues with the bin shifting off the board or off the rack, and it's been super awesome. With the bin on the back and the pannier bags, I can carry a ridiculous amount of groceries, and it's really cool to see how far I can push this bike. And that really brings me to what I'm able to do with this. Now, like I mentioned, I was wanting to integrate cycling more into my everyday life, and this bike really does help me do that in ways that really aren't possible with a standard bike. I've been able to use this bike to replace my truck in almost every single application except for going out of town. I'm able to drop my kids off at school and pick them up in the afternoon on this bike. I'm able to do all of our grocery shopping. Even without the larger cargo bin, I can fit enough groceries for my family of 4 for a week on this bike with 0 issues. One of my favorite things that I've been able to do with this bike is help out with Austin Bicycle Meals. This is a group of folks who work with Austin's Food Not Bombs chapter. Food Not Bombs collects food from different restaurants and grocery stores and the like. They cook delicious meals, and then Austin Bicycle Meals distributes those meals to our unhoused neighbors in and around downtown. This has been one of the most rewarding things I've been able to do with a bike since all of this crazy bike stuff has happened to me. And it's super cool to see how functional the PakYak is when doing things like this. In the last several months, I've put over 1,500 miles on this bike, and that's 1,500 miles that I haven't put on my truck. That's 1,500 miles that I'm not paying for gas, and it's 1,500 miles that takes another car off the road, helping to alleviate traffic and make Austin a little bit better city to get around in. I will say, if there's any downside to having a cargo bike, it is that it is not for introverts. So if you are an introverted person, you might want to think twice about having a cargo bike, because this thing turns heads. Almost every time I'm out on the bike, somebody comments or is asking me questions about it. I've even had drivers, while driving, pull up beside me and ask questions about the bike. It's a really incredible tool, and it definitely turns heads. So that wraps up my short-term review of the PakYak E+. If you can't tell, I am deeply in love with this bike, and I am so excited to see what else it can do and how much it continues to influence and change the way that me and my family live. If you found this video interesting or helpful, be sure to click the like button and don't forget to hit subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Let me know, are you interested in an e-bike? Are you interested in a cargo bike? Do you have one? How much do you love it? Are you looking into the PakYak? What other e-bikes have you seen and are you interested in? I'd love to start a conversation around this, because these bikes are just too awesome to go unnoticed. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.